All right, photosynthesis. Let's do it. Let's do it. All right, photosynthesis. This is our plant process, but interestingly enough, other organisms perform photosynthesis, maybe some that you weren't aware of previously. Okay. And photosynthesis notes out. Okay. So I'm going to sort of draw some structures here. First is going to be, I'm going to redraw that leaf poorly. I mean, man, that's not that good, but whatever. I'm not an artist. Okay, there's my leaf. And just to kind of emphasize this point, in the leaf, there are these openings underneath. So pretend this is the underside of the leaf, and they're called stomata. They look like little mouths under the microscope. It's kind of crazy to see, but underneath leaves, there are these microscopic stomata openings that allow the entry of a gas called CO2. And that's going to be important in photosynthesis, as we'll discover. So that's how CO2 enters plants. And let's see. If we go, actually, before I draw my picture here, there's our leaf. And here is just an electron micrograph of the organelle we're going to talk about, the chloroplast. But I'm going to, so I'll rewrite that on the board. And then these are plant cells. These are what plant cells look like under the microscope. So I just wanted to show you those. Yeah, stomata is a little opening. It's like a pore. It's like two, it just opens like that. It's like a mouth. It's a little mouths underneath the leaf. So let's draw a chloroplast. That's our organelle that is responsible for photosynthesis, right? So the organelle is called a chloroplast. And of course, we, animals, fungi, we don't have chloroplasts. Certain organisms do, which we'll discuss. The first notable thing about our chloroplasts, like our mitochondria, they have a double membrane. They have two membranes. And the chloroplast is full of these membrane sac discs. So discs of these membranous sacs called thylakoids. So let me draw a few. So each individual membrane sac in these stacks is called a thylakoid. So this is a thylakoid. So this, the inside of the sac, the inside of the membrane sac is called the thylakoid lumen. Lumen is a common word to define the inside of a tube structure. So the intestinal lumen is the inside of our, so intestines are like, right, long tubes. The inside of it's called the lumen, the intestinal lumen. So the inside of a thylakoid membrane or a thylakoid disc, whatever you want to call it, is the thylakoid lumen. This is going to be important in photosynthesis, don't worry. I'm not just telling you this for no reason. And actually, the reason is, just say it now, our first stage of photosynthesis takes place inside thylakoids, and it's called the light reactions. The light reactions take place inside our thylakoids. The fluid outside of our thylakoid stacks is called the stroma. This is the stroma, this fluid. I'll just write fluid in parentheses. And the stroma, the outside, is where the second and last phase or stage, whatever, of photosynthesis occurs, and it's called the Calvin cycle. So the Calvin cycle occurs in the stroma. So if that's not, let me, stroma, I'll underline it. So outside of the thylakoids. Calvin cycle. Like Calvin Klein. Yeah, scientists are show-offs a bit. So anytime they discover something, they name it after them. Like fallopian tubes, and you know, it's after fallopian. Islets of Langerhans, all these crazy things. Anyway, another question. Where does, so yeah, the light reactions we're going to look at in detail. They occur actually across the thylakoid membrane. So inside the thylakoid, the lumen, and outside it too. So it's kind of, you'll see. I would just know that the thylakoids are where our light reactions occur, sort of across the membrane of it. Similar to the electron transport chain, which we're gonna be doing. Another electron transport chain, woo! That you're cheering with excitement at your homes right now. Okay. But before we do that, and granted, I will preface this whole thing, plants aren't my thing. They're not my background. I don't have training in, you know, botany as much, so I know enough about photosynthesis, but there's certainly more detail and understanding you can do. It's very interesting. A lot of my colleagues have like they studied plants straight up, and but I have a few that are like cancer biology, microbiology, like myself. But anyways, yeah, if I forget something, then that's probably why. Okay, so let's do an overview, and then we'll dive into the detailed mechanism. So the overview, the first thing I like to teach about photosynthesis, you're going to find that in many ways, photosynthesis is the opposite of cellular respiration. It is the reverse of cellular respiration, the antagonist, if you will. And you'll see what I mean by that. Oh, another joke I found. Let's let you read it. What's stomata? Those are the stomata underneath the leaf. Is anyone laughing, or is it not? I don't know if anyone's laughing. It's annoying. But anyways, I thought that was funny. Stomata. Those are the stomata. See, they look like little mouths. Isn't that kind of creepy? That's underneath every leaf that allows CO2 to enter. Crazy, right? Okay, let's take a look at an overview here. And again, you'll already notice maybe something that's a reverse to cellular respiration. Okay, so let me put the board. So we're taking, here's our overall chemical equation for photosynthesis. Taking carbon dioxide, we're starting with carbon dioxide and water. And our products are glucose and oxygen. Actually 6, right? Couple key things here. First of all, there are enzymes involved, certainly. Biochemical pathways, absolutely. But a key thing to remember here is that this process of photosynthesis, photo from the Greek light, requires light energy, which we'll see shortly. And because an energy input is required, it makes the process endergonic. Now, thinking about reverse of cellular respiration, you'll notice right away, our overall chemical equation is flipped. Cellular respiration, we start with glucose, right? This is glucose. And we start with oxygen. We need oxygen as an input for cellular respiration. Here they are our products. They are the outcome. And our input is what our products were in cellular respiration. Our input in photosynthesis is CO2 and water. Another reverse opposite sort of thing with respiration. Instead of a catabolic breakdown and energy release, we're requiring an energy input. It's endergonic, right? This marker is dying. It requires energy input, it's endergonic. And not just that, it's an anabolic. It's an anabolic process. These are small molecules, and we're synthesizing a larger one, glucose. We're creating a larger molecule from smaller ones, carbon dioxide and water. So this means it's anabolic. So I'll write anabolic here. Okay, there are 3 types of organisms on this planet that do photosynthesis. And I'm jealous, because if we could do it, world hunger wouldn't be a thing. But there are 3 types of cells, I should say, that perform photosynthesis. 3 types of cells. First, plants, of course. Plant cells photosynthesize. Another, I'm sure you've heard of algae. Algae cells. Algae are interesting, not exactly plants, not exactly animals, right? We actually call them protists. They're in a category of what we call protists. Photosynthetic protists. They're similar to plants, but not enough so to be called plants. And then last but not least, there are actually some bacteria, not all bacteria, of course, but some species that photosynthesize, and their name are cyanobacteria. So all the cyanobacteria species perform photosynthesis. And in fact, the reason oxygen is on the planet, by the way, is because cyanobacteria were the first organisms ever to do photosynthesis. They evolved this mechanism around 2.5 billion years ago. And because of that, because oxygen was not on the planet that long ago, we'll kind of get more into this sort of stuff in our last unit. It's really fascinating, our evolutionary history of life, though. Just that there was no oxygen on the planet, and when these guys came about 2.5 billion years ago, they released all this oxygen in this process. And so that's why oxygen existed, and then all of a sudden you started to see organisms that could utilize the oxygen for cellular respiration. All right. Oh, it's only 6:15. I thought I was like going too slow. Any questions so far? Six oxygen molecules, yeah. So I have a new plan for this lecture. Usually I go a little bit, I'm still gonna go in depth a bit on the light reactions, but for time's sake, I feel like I'd run out of time with the Calvin cycle, the second stage, plus this whole unit and respiration, it's a lot already. So I think I'm gonna simplify Calvin cycle a bit and just keep it as simple as I can. But simple doesn't mean not informative, by the way. I just want you guys to learn in its intro. Sorry, what does it say under bacteria? Yes, cyanobacteria. That's, yeah, those are the species that photosynthesize. What am I gonna say? Oh no, just kidding. But fun fact, again, plants, bacteria, algae. Algae is like a really vague term for a lot of these protists. Like seaweed is considered algae photosynthesizing, but it's not a plant, right? It doesn't have roots or anything. But I don't know if you guys saw the biofluorescent algae, plankton, dinoflagellates. Those are considered algae. They photosynthesize. So these plankton cells in the ocean that whales eat, not bacteria, not plants, but they also do this. Yeah, your exam on Wednesday, so 2 days, will include photosynthesis. Otherwise, I'd be lecturing something not on your exam. You'd probably be like, I'll worry about this later, and all my students would be asleep. Okay, moving on. Oh, this is cool. I just included this. It's a sea slug, but it's actually not photosynthesizing. It's a symbiotic relationship, and it's covered in algae. And the algae photosynthesizes sugar and creates sugars, glucose, which the sea slug eats. So it's pretty neat. Anyways, light reactions. First stage, thylakoids. Let's do it. Now, I'd like to go into detail on this because, like I mentioned, in many ways, photosynthesis is the reverse of cellular respiration. It's a reverse endergonic anabolic process. And I think this helps highlight that. So this is our first stage of photosynthesis called the light reactions. So named very appropriately, it will require sunlight. We know plants don't grow in the dark, right? They need to be doing photosynthesis to grow and make energy and make plant structures, and we'll get into that. All right, I'm gonna replace this black, by the way, because it's dying on me. Got a new one. Okay. So I'm gonna start by drawing a membrane. Specifically the thylakoid membrane. So I'm going to draw a few phospholipids. Remember our phospholipid bilayer. And then it extends out. Now, this is our thylakoid membrane. And up here, I'm going to represent as our stroma that we drew. And then down here would be the inside of the thylakoid lumen. All right, let me get, oh, cool. I have an orange to represent sunlight. Okay, so actually, why don't I, let me see. I think I'm gonna draw my membrane structures first. Okay, let me do, erase that. I'm gonna run out of room. So we've got this. Purple. Green. Okay. Rewrite thylakoid membrane. All right, well, first thing occurs in photosynthesis. You saw on the left side of the reaction, it requires water and carbon dioxide, right? Well, carbon dioxide, it won't be relevant yet until the second stage. Right now, though, the very first step that occurs, what do we have to give? I just said it, water. Water. So the water molecules, we water our plants, right? This is why. What actually occurs is water donates its electrons to the first complex here. It's actually, you would think it's a protein. It's more of a, we call it a photosystem. It's a complex of protein and chlorophyll molecules. So let's label it. This is actually photosystem 2. Annoyingly, it's the first photosystem. This is photosystem 1. Why is it photosystem 2, you're asking, probably. Well, it was discovered second. So it's the second one, but it's the first one in our chain, and they haven't changed it. They're lazy scientists. They haven't changed it. Don't want to change all the textbooks, maybe, I don't know. But a photosystem is a complex of protein and chlorophyll. And the chlorophyll is going to be important in a moment. So our photosystems here, 2 and 1, protein and chlorophyll, which is a pigment molecule. Pigment molecule. It's a pigment molecule which is good at absorbing light. That's pigment molecules are good at that. Absorbing light and absorbing light energy. Question. Oh, does water get low? That's a good question. I believe it gets donated from the lumen. It does. You'll see why. But when you water your plants, it has to enter, and it'll enter straight into the lumen in order to do this process. But again, I'm not a botanist, so I think about it. It's actually irrelevant. It might be in the stroma, but for my drawing, this is easier, and you don't have to know that. Because I don't. But water will, regardless, either if it's in the stroma or lumen, it's going to donate electrons, okay? It's going to donate electrons. So I'm going to draw an arrow here, then draw it off. It's 2 electrons. It's 2 electrons, let me think. Yeah, okay. You don't have to know if it's 2 electrons or 1, just that it's electrons are donated. So that's the key. Water is our electron donor. And so once water donates these electrons, it's actually split and comes apart to become oxygen and 2 hydrogen ions. And of course, to be picky, yeah, it's half an oxygen, of course, but they'll combine and become 2 halves will combine and become the oxygen gas that is going to be released. So oxygen that's released into the atmosphere from photosynthesis comes from this very first step, where electrons from water are donated to the the first photosystem called photosystem 2. And then there's our oxygen byproduct. So there's our oxygen, all right, byproduct of this first step. Okay. 2 oxygen, because O2 is oxygen gas. So basically, really in the textbook, you'll see that this is half, or it's just 1 oxygen atom, but they'll combine and become oxygen gas. I just want you to remember that O2, oxygen gases, comes from this step. They'll combine, another water will come in, it'll combine. But that's just, extra details. The main picture here, water donates electrons, oxygen is produced as a byproduct. Now, these electrons from water, Yeah, I did. So I'll repeat it. Basically, it's just extra details. The main picture, because they'll combine, but the main picture is that electrons are donated from water, oxygen is produced as a byproduct. Uh-oh, internet's not good. Oh. That's annoying. Let's see. Can you hear me now? Did it fix? Breaking up a little? I wonder why that is, why that happens. Entropy. Ugh, God. Frickin', yeah. Router dandy. Yeah, it's adapting. I don't really know. I have really good internet. We pay a lot of money. Check my internet connection. I have full bars. Oh, now it's saying my internet's unstable. Oh boy, that's great. Goes red. Maybe I'll Google. I Google how to fix internet connection Zoom. I'm gonna look into that for next time. I don't know. Maybe there's something I can do. Okay, let me try and finish. And anything that's, so streaming takes a lot of data. Oh, really? The Ethernet cord, like a cord instead of Wi-Fi? I don't even think my computer has a port for that. Darn, it doesn't. It's a MacBook. Oh. USB to Ethernet adapter? I will Google that. Maybe Amazon has it. I think my router's upstairs. I'd have to lecture upstairs, but that's okay. I will Google that on Amazon or wherever they sell it. But yeah, USB-C to Ethernet. Thank you. Appreciate that. Can COVID just end so we can do this in person? Anyways, all right. Well, let's get through today's lecture, and then I'm going to work on that throughout the week. Okay. So the next thing that happens after water donates electrons is we need sun, right? The light reactions. So the sun, there's my sun, is going to shine and actually transmit heat energy and excite, we call it exciting the electrons. It actually moves the electrons, gives them energy, moves them to a higher energy state. So I'll represent that by drawing it higher up. So these electrons get excited by the sun to a higher energy state. And again, the reason this can occur is because we have chlorophyll pigment. So let's just say this is chlorophyll that can absorb a lot of that light energy in these photosystems. Okay, now, you probably noticed this looks very familiar to our electron transport chain from last time. Well, there are some similarities. And namely, we start with these electrons that are going to transfer to our next protein. And as they do that, they go to a lower energy state. And we talked about how that we don't lose this energy. It's not destroyed, but it's repurposed. It's used to drive an energy requiring process. And this is not a photosystem, just a representative membrane protein that will act very similarly to our electron transport chain proteins we've seen before as a proton pump, and pump hydrogen ions from the stroma into the lumen by active transport. Yeah, I can send a picture of this too if you want, totally. Yeah, I'll take a picture at the end. Okay, so this membrane protein's acting as a pump, just like we've seen before. After this, the electrons transfer over, and hydrogens are getting pumped to the lumen. Okay, next thing that happens, the electrons are going to transfer over again, but this time they end up at photosystem 1. And again, they lose energy. When they do that transfer, they're going to a lower energy state. And again, with this next photosystem here, we're going to have light strike the electrons in this photosystem and excite them to a higher energy state. And it actually catalyzes a very interesting reaction. Just like, let's see here. Okay. So just like we've seen in the electron transport chain last time, we had a final electron acceptor molecule. In that case, it was oxygen, right? Well, here it's a molecule called NADP+. NADP+. This is our final electron acceptor. And when light strikes these electrons here, it actually catalyzes them to link up and attach to NADP+ with, that looks confusing, hold on. The electrons with a hydrogen, kind of like we've seen before. So I'm going to redraw this to be a little more clear. NADP+ accepts the electrons here, then it tags on or attaches on another hydrogen or a hydrogen ion, and it becomes NADPH. NADPH, which is going to be an important molecule in our next stage of photosynthesis, the Calvin cycle. Okay, last thing. From the pumping of protons, the same mechanism, same exact mechanism of chemiosmosis is going to occur in photosynthesis here in our first stage that we saw before, where these hydrogen ions are going to go from a high concentration to low through our an ATP synthase protein and generate ATP, just like we've seen before. So the first stage of photosynthesis actually generates ATP, as well as this NADPH molecule. And so we call this a proton gradient, and it flows down the gradient from high to low. So this is our proton gradient. Okay, so I just want to highlight a couple key differences, right, between this and respiration and the electron transport chain we saw before in that totally different, unrelated process in a different organelle, right, mitochondria. So in this process, we start with water. Remember, in respiration, we ended with water. So I like to highlight these just to help you remember, and it's very interesting how in so many ways, photosynthesis is the reverse. It's the opposite of respiration. And of course, there are also similarities. We see the electron transport, we see the membrane pumping of these protons, and we see the protons flowing through ATP synthase and generating ATP. Another interesting thing, oxygen is produced in this stage at the very beginning, whereas oxygen in respiration is at the very end. It's that very last step, creating water, and that's respiration. Another weird thing you notice is my ATP synthase is upside down here. It actually looks, it looks upside down in photosynthesis. And the protons flow the other way, right? In the mitochondria, the protons are being pumped out here and flowing back down into the matrix. And here they're flowing from the inside out. So in so many ways, right, there's just these reverse, inverse differences between the light reactions. And again, and another thing, really, light reactions are the very first thing of photosynthesis. The very first thing is an electron transport chain and creating this NADPH and all this, versus cellular respiration. It was the very last stage, right? All right. We've got (9 minutes, and I just kind of want to do a very broad overview of the Calvin cycle. I don't want to get to the details. Don't have time to do it anyway. But there's just a couple key bits of information I want to go over. So let's let's do that. Oh, here's a picture from the textbook of this process. We have our photosystems, water, donating electrons, NADP plus becoming NADPH, synthase, creating ATP, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so we don't have time to do all the steps of Calvin cycle. So I just want to take a look at a picture and kind of emphasize key things, okay? So the first key thing is you notice that this is where CO2 becomes involved. So remember in photosynthesis, the starting materials are water and carbon dioxide. We haven't talked about CO2 yet, right? Light reactions, they join the party here in the Calvin cycle. This is the second stage, and this is in the stroma, right, of the chloroplast. So carbon dioxide enters, and we call this carbon fixation. And I was gonna take a picture of this, right? Send it to you guys. This beautiful mess. Okay. So the very first part of our Calvin cycle is this process of carbon fixation, whereby the leaves take in carbon dioxide from the atmosphere through those openings underneath the leaf. So if I write 2 Calvin cycle, okay. Okay. So again, just being very broad, I want you to, everything I say about the Calvin cycle is what I want you to know. I don't want you to know anything extra. So what do I want you to know? I want you to know that ATP input is required. So, and as well as this NADPH. So the ATP, as well as the NADPH, I shouldn't have erased it, but ATP and NADPH that we just got from the light reactions are required as inputs, and they're used in the Calvin cycle. So the first step of the Calvin cycle is carbon fixation. This is when carbon dioxide is fixed, call it fixed, taken in from the atmosphere. The second step, ATP, and this molecule NADPH, which if you take more bio classes and major classes, a lot of anabolic what's the word I'm looking for? Biosynthetic, I believe. My brain's melting. Biosynthesis, when you're building large molecules, oftentimes NADPH is involved, but ATP and NADPH used, that's all I want you to know. They're used or consumed, whatever you want to call it. And then last thing, it's a cycle, right? So starting material is regenerated. And that's all I want you to know about the Calvin cycle. This starting substrate is called RuBP. You don't have to know that. I just want you to know that it regenerates. But then, of course, what's the goal here, right? It's to produce our sugar. Photosynthesis is producing this sugar here. So the stage 3 is regenerating this RuBP, which is the starting molecule, starting reactant of our cycle. But using NADPH and ATP in this second stage, we generate a 3-carbon sugar, phosphoglycer something. Told you but this 3-carbon sugar can combine with another 3-carbon sugar to create glucose. So you know what I'm going to write, actually? Maybe I have it in my notes. G3, glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. There you go. But you don't have to know that. So I want you to know 3 carbon sugars combine to form, so 2 3-carbon sugars, 2 sugars with 3 carbons each, combine to form glucose, which was the goal. Wanted to generate that sugar. And now, since I have 2 minutes, I want to do the broad overview. I have a really good picture that I really like to kind of put it all together. Okay. I'll give you actually 1 more minute, and then we'll do the broad overview. Man, it's getting darker early. Oh, it's already 7. Okay. Oh, Joey, thanks for reminding me. No, in fact, I should probably, I didn't know I had that many questions for study questions on Calvin cycle. But I'll send an email. And I think what I'll do is I'll say, if you're doing those study questions, extra credit, then you don't have to do some questions that I don't go over. So thank you for finding me. Yeah, because I ran out of time, and plants are great, but you know, I just like the main ideas. The nitty gritty isn't as critical at this level. Study questions, Calvin cycle. Okay, so let me show you this picture that I really like. Here you go. So here's our overall summary of photosynthesis, okay? Here's our light reactions. These are the light reactions. Water's entering, light's entering, have our photosystems, electron transport chains, and oxygen is produced. Awesome. But so is, right, ATP and NADPH. These two molecules here from the light reactions, and they feed into the Calvin cycle. They're used in the Calvin cycle, along with carbon dioxide fixed from the atmosphere. And through a series of chemical reactions, we generate glucose or sugars, which we can combine to form glucose, which isn't shown here, which is annoying actually. Cellular respiration, of course, glucose for cellular respiration. I think that's what they mean. Cellulose, starch. This process can actually be used to create lots of larger sugars too. So it's very important, especially for plants, of course, and cell walls of cellulose, things like that. Just to wrap up here, because it's 6:51. After ATP and NADPH are used, the ATP loses its phosphate. NADPH loses its hydrogen, and so they actually regenerate and can be used again in the light reactions to form ATP and NADPH again. Okay. Woof. It's a hoof. Okay, so questions. Study questions are due on the day of the exam. So I gotta create that assignment too. Yeah, so they're due by midnight on Wednesday. So any questions about photosynthesis before we depart? I'm gonna send you those pics as well, the pictures I drew. I know I sort of rushed at the end there. So does anyone have any big picture, especially on this Calvin cycle? All righty. So no lecture Wednesday. You'll just log in 5:30 for your test. You do have lab. So I will be emailing you photosynthesis lab materials tonight. Yeah. Thanks for reminding me, actually. The output of the light reaction is going to be oxygen. Oxygen, NADPH, and ATP. Are we feeling, you can see why, like, it's I wish I had more time, especially for this unit. To condense it into one lecture is always kind of tough. I got a private message from Christine. So email me, Christine, email me. We can figure it out. There's a lot of information. Yeah. Yeah. I remember first learning this and I was crazy overwhelmed. man, do I have good advice? So when I first learned it, I did awful and I didn't get it. And it was actually my lowest scoring exam. But in grad school, when I finally got it, the thing I did, I mean, there's nothing better than time spent. There's nothing. It's just kind of, it's like lifting weights. If you wanna improve your health, it takes hard work and it takes a lot of time, right? That's the best. As far as methods go, I've seen Khan Academy's videos on this. They're good. I think they summarize things pretty well. You know what let me think. Best way to do it, just making sure you had good notes, and the textbook is pretty good at walking you through sort of what I talked about, especially with respiration. And now that you have sort of the background that I've given you, the textbook I think will make a lot more sense. So I think the textbook's great. Rereading your notes, of course. Asking me questions, that's always a good idea. Input of light reaction, water. I can show that picture again, actually. Here you go. So here's our light reactions. You're gonna have water and light. That's really it. You could say NADP plus and ADP as well with a phosphate as well, but really water is that electron donor and light are the main really important inputs there. No problem. Yeah, study tips. How did I get it? How did I finally get it? Yeah, time. I just really stared at my book and my slides and just tried to make it make sense. I just like tapped my head and I was like, I had to make it make sense. And so when I think about like electrons moving down, losing energy, why? I asked, why is that happening? Oh, it's to actively transport these because that's a requiring energy thing. So once I connected it like that, it all made sense. And then it built this memory pathway and I just remembered that. So making it make sense in time. Rewatch every Zoom lecture. You'll be good. I have confidence in you guys. I always tell you, if I could do it, I think anybody could. I mean, and it's a good feeling. So I encourage you to put the time in because this isn't easy. You're absolutely right. It's a lot to know. And I would be proud anyway. If you can get some of this stuff, it's not easy. It's college level, it's metabolism, it's biochemistry. This is what biochemists look at. So if you get even a little bit, that's something to be proud of. I'm trying to think of my other study methods. If you want to watch more videos, yeah, I do like Khan Academy. They're great. Diagrams really helped. That's good. Yeah, drawing things out is also really good. And honestly, the way I understood things a lot was when I started teaching them too. So if you draw them out and talk it out to yourself or your dog or whatever, that's always helpful. 6, Tiffany, that's correct. Yeah, that's although there's 6 CO2s as well. Wait. No, that's not correct. The overall chemical equation. So I got to ask the question. Overall chemical equation for respiration. Aerobic cellular respiration. We have glucose that we start with, plus 6 oxygen molecules, and they turn into 6 CO2 molecules and 6 water molecules. That's cellular respiration. And then photosynthesis. So if I said this is cellular respiration, photosynthesis is the reverse. Okay. Well, as always, if things come up, just shoot me an email. And if anyone wants to do an office hour before the exam, we could do that. Totally up to you. Just let me know. I usually do office hours an hour before. And since there's an exam, I might not be able to just meet with one person. It might be multiple, but you might have questions that help each other. So, okay. Yeah, that's it. So good luck. It'll be 40 multiple choice questions again. Do like a class office hour. Shoot me an email and a whole class. I mean, whoever wants to show up, yeah. Yeah, whoever sends me an email, whoever sends me emails, we'll just do a massive whatever if you want review session of sorts on Wednesday. All right, guys, have a great night. Good luck. And if you're not at the office hour Wednesday, then I'll see you all next Monday. And look out for photosynthesis lab info. I'll be sending that tonight as well. You're welcome. Thank you. All right, bye everyone.